On the morning of April 3, 1979, nothing unusual happened to Daniel Everett Holloway. And that was the first unusual thing, though he would not recognize it as such until much later, when memory had begun to behave less like a record and more like a filing cabinet with mislabeled drawers. Daniel woke at 6:42 a.m. because that was when the alarm rang. The alarm had been purchased 2 years earlier from a Sears catalog, model number forgotten, beige plastic casing slightly yellowed even then, as if it had aged faster than other objects. He lay still for 27 seconds after it rang, not because he was thinking, but because his body required that amount of time to accept that it was no longer asleep. The ceiling above him had a hairline crack that began near the light fixture and ran diagonally toward the northeast corner of the room. He had once tried to remember when the crack first appeared and had failed. It had always been there, which meant it had come into existence at some point, quietly, without requiring permission. He turned off the alarm with his right hand. The skin on the back of that hand was dry. He made a mental note to apply lotion later, a note that would not survive the day. Daniel was 32 years old. He lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Dayton, Ohio, on the second floor of a brick building constructed in 1956. The building had 8 units. None of the tenants knew all the others by name. This was not considered a problem. He swung his legs off the bed and sat for a moment, feet on the carpet, which had once been brown and was now a color better described as persistently used. The radiator made a soft ticking sound, though it was early April and no longer needed to work very hard. Outside, a car passed. Daniel did not look out the window. He went to the bathroom, brushed his teeth for 1 minute and 40 seconds, rinsed, and looked at his reflection. His hairline had receded slightly since college, but not enough to be worth mentioning to anyone. His eyes were brown. His face, when at rest, suggested neither happiness nor sadness, but compliance. He dressed in clothes laid out the night before: gray slacks, a pale blue button-down shirt, brown belt, brown shoes. The shirt had been ironed on Sunday. He had done a competent job. In the kitchen, he poured cornflakes into a bowl, added milk, and sat at the small table near the window. He read the back of the cereal box, though he had read it many times before. It contained information about vitamins and minerals. He did not verify any of it. At 7:28 a.m., he washed the bowl, placed it upside down in the drying rack, and picked up his briefcase. The briefcase contained a yellow legal pad, 3 pens, a stapled packet of forms, and a paperback book he had been reading for 6 months. He locked the apartment door, tugged the handle once to make sure, and walked down the stairs. The hallway smelled faintly of cleaning solution and something else that had no clear source. Mrs. Klein from apartment 1B was retrieving her mail. She nodded. Daniel nodded back. No words were exchanged. He drove a blue 1974 Ford Pinto to work. The car started on the second turn of the key. This was acceptable. The drive took 17 minutes. He listened to the radio, which was playing a song he did not dislike. Daniel worked as a junior records analyst for the Montgomery County Department of Infrastructure Documentation. The department occupied 2 floors of a concrete building with narrow windows and fluorescent lighting that hummed softly, like a reminder that something electrical was always happening, whether or not it was useful. His job involved reviewing forms submitted by other departments and ensuring that they had been filled out correctly before being archived. The archives were not digital. They consisted of metal filing cabinets arranged in rows, each drawer labeled with a year, a category, and a sequence number. The drawers were heavy. Daniel liked this. It gave the impression that the work mattered. At 8:01 a.m., he sat at his desk. The desk was metal, gray, with scratches on the surface that suggested previous occupants had occasionally pressed down too hard with pens. He placed his briefcase under the desk, arranged his pens parallel to one another, and opened the first folder. The folder contained Form ID 22B, Request for Minor Roadway Adjustment. He checked the date, the signatures, the attached map. Everything was in order. He initialed the top right corner and placed the folder in the Approved stack. He did this again and again. At 10:14 a.m., he noticed that one form had a discrepancy. The date on page 3 did not match the date on page 1. He frowned slightly, corrected it with a note, and set it aside for review. This took 90 seconds. He felt briefly useful. During his lunch break, he ate a turkey sandwich at his desk and read 3 pages of his book. He did not remember what he read. This was Daniel's life, and it continued in this manner not because it had to, but because nothing intervened strongly enough to stop it. Years later, when people would attempt to reconstruct how certain things had happened, they would begin by looking for moments of obvious importance, decisions, conversations, visible turning points. They would not find them here. In 1983, Daniel received a modest promotion. His title changed to Records Analyst 2. His responsibilities expanded slightly. He now trained new hires, most of whom stayed less than 2 years. He did not ask them why they left. In 1985, his father died of a heart attack while mowing the lawn. Daniel took 3 days off work. At the funeral, people told him his father would have been proud. Daniel nodded. He did not know how to measure this. His mother moved into a smaller house. Daniel helped pack boxes. Many of the boxes contained papers, old tax returns, instruction manuals for appliances no longer owned, receipts. Daniel suggested throwing some of them away. His mother said, "You never know." He did not argue. In 1987, Daniel bought a new alarm clock. It was digital. He woke up at 6:40 a.m. instead of 6:42. The world, meanwhile, was changing at a rate that could be measured statistically, but not emotionally, at least not from Daniel's desk. Computers began appearing in offices. The department received 2 in 1989. They were placed in a separate room and used primarily for word processing. The archives remained physical. Daniel learned to type. He was not particularly fast, but he was accurate. Accuracy was valued. He briefly married. Her name was Susan. They met at a friend's barbecue. She worked in insurance. They had compatible schedules and incompatible silences. The marriage lasted 4 years. The divorce was amicable and involved the division of furniture and shared kitchenware. Daniel kept the couch. Susan kept the blender. After the divorce, Daniel returned to the habit of eating dinner at the small table near the window. Sometimes he watched people walk by. He did not wonder where they were going. In 1994, the department began a partial digitization initiative. Daniel was assigned to oversee the conversion of select records into a database. The database had limitations. Some fields were optional, others were not. Daniel spent weeks ensuring consistency. He noticed something during this process, though he did not write it down. Certain records, particularly those from the late 1960s, seemed to resist categorization. Information was missing, duplicated, or placed in unexpected fields. This was not alarming. Old data was often messy. He corrected what he could. In 1998, Daniel's mother died quietly in her sleep. He inherited several boxes of documents. He stored them in his apartment closet. He did not open them immediately. At work, he was now considered senior staff. People asked him questions. He answered them carefully. The years continued to stack up, one on top of another, like folders in a drawer. The drawer grew heavy. Daniel did not believe his life was remarkable. If asked, he would have described it as adequate. He paid his bills on time, he followed procedures, he recycled when instructed to do so. What he did not know, what no one knew at the time, was that the records he had touched,
The forms he had corrected, the small discrepancies he had smoothed over, were part of a much larger accumulation. Not a plan, not a conspiracy, just an unintended coherence. This would not become obvious for a long time. For now, Daniel went to work. He reviewed forms, he initialed corners, he placed documents into drawers that slid shut with a sound that suggested completion. And each time a drawer closed, something was preserved, not just paper, but a version of events that would later be treated as if it had always been that way. He did not hear this happening. No one ever does.